This week in the conversation, I have the honor to welcome Alice Liddell, a Chicago-based writer who's written countless of books. And when I use the word countless, I underscore the word. I don't use it lightly. She's a young writer, but yet she's written so many novels, historical fictions, romance, short stories, and on top of that, she has already published 3 poetry collections. But before we get into the video, I just want to remind everyone it's important to subscribe to the YouTube channel. And if you do, don't forget to click the notification bell so that way every time a video is posted, it'll go directly into your portal. So let's get started. Again, my name is Ardain Isma, and it's an honor for me to welcome to the conversation author Alice Liddell. I just have to remind to let you know this is a prolific writer. She's written several books, and on top of that, she's a performance artist. And just kind of wondering, to begin with, Alice, how do you do all this and still being relevant in the game?
I want to thank you so much, Ardain, for having me on here. It is an honor, and it is so delightful to be talking to you today. Okay. To answer your question, how do I do it all? That is the question that I get most frequently.
Okay.
And in the past, my answer was I don't sleep. But in recent months, I've been trying to do my best to change my schedule in order to do more self-care and get more sleep and allow myself to be a human being. Okay. But I still manage to do most of doing it all. And it's a matter of that I just work very hard as a freelance worker. I don't have a standard office job. Okay. So I basically have 24/7 that I work for myself. But that also comes with all the challenges of working for myself. So.
Exactly. And I think that it's a situation millions of Americans have been experiencing since COVID. A lot of professionals, including me, and it's been almost a year since I pretty much work from home as a university professor. So it's not just you. I hear exactly. I know what you're talking about. You have to discipline yourself to get it right. Mm-hmm. My first question, because I know you graduated from Columbia College of Chicago, mm-hmm, with a degree in fiction writing.
Yes.
And after graduation, so you said you went to work as a freelance model. So mm-hmm, it's kind of two different things. So how did you make such a dramatic switch from fiction into being a model?
It honestly, at first glance, it seems like two completely separate worlds. But it wasn't so much of a jump for me because as a child, okay, I actually also worked as a professional model. And then my parents had me quit my career because they saw how much it was interfering with school. Okay. And so once I graduated, I was able to pursue that full time because, I was an adult and nobody could stop me. So okay. I did that. And also because, you can be a writer forever. There is no time cap on being a writer. And I wanted to capitalize on that very small age window that I had to be able to work as a professional model. And honestly, working as a professional model really helped my career as a writer and as a creative person in general, because it taught me all the skills that I needed and I use every day to market myself, as well as it gave me so many opportunities to travel to so many different places and meet so many different people. And that has really helped me to develop my art and my writing so much to be able to, draw on all those different perspectives and different types of people and places. It's really done a lot for me.
Okay, and you're so right, because it's been said to be an effective writer, you have to be able to understand human behavior. So I think by traveling around the country, it probably give you a lot to be able to write fiction, because unless you understand how people behave, then you won't be able to create the world that you would need in order to put together a fiction writer. So my next question, after you becomes a professional model, you also trying to keep both of them. You never stop writing, but like at what point your writing takes precedent, and you put in the back burner your modeling activities, and you put writing to the forefront. At what point? After a year of doing so, or a couple of years of doing so?
So I started modeling in 2008, which is around the time that I started college, and I was traveling full time after I graduated in 2011.
Right.
And I was going on national tours, and modeling was my job. It was my main profession, my main income. And then I retired from modeling in 2013.
Okay.
And it was a combination of things that actually caused me to retire from modeling, where, before COVID happened, of course, I still would do modeling projects, but they were strictly only local, only with people that I either knew or came very highly recommended, and only for specific projects. So it was, definitely more of like a side hustle thing at that point.
Okay.
But in 2013, there was a combination of things that happened. I turned 24.
Okay.
And the modeling age cap is basically at 25.
Okay.
At 25 is where you're going to see a huge drop off in gigs, because
Really?
unless you're able to get agency signed to like a commercial photography company,
Okay.
you're really not going to get a lot of gigs. Once you hit 25, it's just going to be a significant drop off, and I knew that, and I wanted to prepare for that so that I could bolster my income.
Okay.
As well as, unfortunately, I also went through a divorce that was super painful and difficult. And so, it was just kind of a trial by fire. I had a lot of things thrown at me all at once. I had to basically kind of build my life back up from scratch. And I had to move back in with my parents. I had to get a typical office job.
Okay.
And it just really motivated me to, work toward that creative life again, of being able to work for myself, and, being able to put my creative works at the forefront. So while working that office job, I was also working on my writing and my art at the same time, every free minute that I had. So yeah, that's kind of how that happened.
Let's go back to modeling again, because you said at the age of 25, the industry somehow it's become very hard to hire people who pass that age category. Is it because of the age itself, or because of what's required as an individual to be a model?
It's definitely the age number. It really doesn't have a lot to do with the requirements or anything like that, because I look significantly younger than I actually am. I'm 32. I'm 32 years old. I look way younger than that. I've always looked way younger than I do, but they look at you. It's a requirement. You have to bring your license, and your identification information to every shoot to prove that you're of age, and blah, blah, blah. And they'll see that number on there. And if you're older than 25, they're like, oh, they act like you're a grandma or something. It's crazy. But yeah, it doesn't matter how young you look. If that number is there, a lot of people are going to be biased, and they're just not going to hire you. They're going to pass you by for that 21, 22-year-old. That's the sweet spot.
So since I know you and I are writers, let me ask you this question, because they say in the publishing world, the younger you are, the better chance you get at securing a book deal, especially if you have to go through a an agency. Is that did you find that to be the truth?
Um, no, not really in my experience and the experiences that I've heard from my fellow authors.
Okay.
I mean, maybe that's true for like the big time publishing houses.
Okay.
But I really haven't experienced that. I could see how maybe there might be a bit of a bias there, that they might want younger writers as opposed to older writers because they believe that then there's more of a timeline there for them to get more stories out of you. But
Exactly. That's why I heard.
yeah,
I've
I'm
been
not sure.
in some writers' conferences, and I heard people make the same reference when it comes to finding a contract with through an agency. A lot of agents tend to look for writers that are younger, so they can have a long for the age timeline you're just referring to. So when you at the office work where you were at, that's when you begin to understand maybe I need to go back to my writing, career. This is exactly precisely what you love to do because you went to school for it. Yeah. So you find support within the writing community, is it around Chicago? You were born and raised in Chicago, right?
Yes, so I was born and raised technically in the suburbs. However, my parents have worked in downtown Chicago my whole life. So I spent a lot of my time in the city. I would go to work with my parents and hang out with them there. We would regularly go into the city during the day and at night for different activities and just to hang out in the city. So I grew up, basically with one foot in the city and one foot in the suburbs. I was very familiar with it. Not just those kids who are like, well, I go to Wrigleyville to go to the Cubs game. And I'm like, that's not Chicago. That doesn't count. Like, no, I went to the real city. I hung out in the real city, went to lots of different neighborhoods, lots of different places. I was very, very familiar. So by the time I went to college in Chicago, like, it was no biggie. I was like, I've been doing this my whole life. I'm here. What's up? So yeah, it was just an easy transition for me. And yeah, I've found so much support from the local writing community here in Chicago. There's a lot of really great events. I mean, of course, I'm talking about this all before COVID happened. There were like a lot of events that I would go to on a weekly basis, honestly, where I would go and do live readings. I would hang out with my other writer friends. We would talk about our writing, get advice, get support. And one of the writing events, Gumbo Fiction Salon, is run by my professor, Tina Jens. She was my professor in college, and since I graduated, she's become a mentor for me. And so she's been a really big support, and she actually played a huge role in helping me get my first novel published. So,
let me stop you right here. So, Alice, now, when did you publish your first novel?
So I published my first novel in April of 2018.
Okay. Was that Geisha Hands? Is that the one?
No, that was my third novel.
That's the third one?
Yeah. So my first novel was actually Love of the Sea.
Okay.
Yes, it's a mermaid fantasy novel.
Okay.
Yeah, Geisha Hands is my third novel.
Okay, and now Geisha Hands is a historical fiction.
Yes.
That's the one, okay.
Yep.
Okay. So is that, because I know that you have a very pretty strong quote. You say that writing for research and also writing for pleasure, sometimes they tend to overlap, because most writers who say that are writers who really love to write historical fiction. Was that right?
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. Yeah, I love to write historical fiction. Geisha Hands is my first historical fiction novel. I do have a few other historical fiction novels that I am currently working on right now. They are definitely, yes.
Well, let me start with right here, Alice.
Yeah.
Few historical fiction. So I know you discipline yourself, right?
Hmm.
Okay. You have these projects going on, and also writers sometimes they have self-imposed deadlines.
Hmm.
That's part of the discipline process. So, and I know you have a poetry collection also, right? A collection of poetry. My understanding.
Yeah, I have 7 poetry collections published currently.
Okay. So when do you anticipate of at least for me to be able to lay my hands on the next historical? When do you think?
So actually I participated in PitMad, which is the March event on Twitter. It's an all-day event at the beginning of March where you pitch one of your novels in the hopes of either winning a literary agent or in the hopes that a publisher will see your pitch and they will invite you to submit to them.
Okay.
And unfortunately, I did not pick up a literary agent this year during PitMad. It was my first PitMad. I learned a lot, but I did get invited to submit my novel that I was pitching to a publisher, and I already sent that off earlier this month. So waiting on the reply. Publishers move slow, so I know I'm not going to hear back for a while.
I know.
But it is a dark vampire fantasy, but it is based off of the French Revolution.
The French
in
Revolution.
1870.
That's interesting.
Yes.
So tell me, so that means you researched that, and there has to be some great historical figures in that novel, right?
Well, yes and no. So I use the vampires as kind of like a parallel to the French nobility.
Okay.
And then of course the peasants are the peasants revolting against them. Yeah, so I have it kind of like this literal, the nobility preying on the peasants sort of thing going on here with the way with the French Revolution started, that the nobility was sucking France dry.
Right.
So, you know, I kind of played on that with that. But yes, a lot of research did go into making the novel to make sure that even though I had this fantasy element going on, that the way that life is back then is relevant to the way that they behave in the novel. And on top of that, I actually learned French at a young age. My parents had me learn it through private tutors. And so parts of the novel are actually in French.
C'est très intéressant.
Ah, tu parles français aussi?
Bien sûr. Ça me fait plaisir. Yeah, so I'll be able to read it. So I just can't wait. What's the title?
Succumb to Darkness.
Succumb to Darkness. Okay.
Yes.
Because I know this great 19th century author, he wrote this Alexander Dumas.
Yeah,
he was very prolific in the 19th century, and he was very famous for his kind of out of the norm novels, you know.
Yeah.
So when you, the novels that you published before, did you publish them with different agents, or you just went directly to an indie publisher?
So there is a bit of different stuff going on. So Love of the Sea was my first novel, and I went through a traditional publisher called Inksmith Publishing.
Okay.
I had to go through the whole, process of cold submitting to them through their website.
Right.
And then, getting the acceptance back and the invitation to send them the first couple chapters.
Okay.
And then after some back and forth, they sent me the contract to have my book published. So, I and that's what I wanted to do with my first novel, was I wanted to have that traditional process just to kind of prove I got this, I'm a real author, I can get my writing out there that way and all that jazz. And then my other 4 novels that I have currently are published through a publishing company that I actually co-own with my best friend, Brian Thompson.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we go through like all of the professional steps. So he does all of the professional layout and stuff like that to make sure
Okay.
that everything is readable and, up to all the standards. And we have all of the, professional IBN codes and all that. So,
Right.
we are a legit publishing
Publish,
company,
publish.
Cloud Orchid Publishing. It's just that we have more of a focus on doing our own projects currently. We do
Right.
have submissions open for other people to submit to us,
Right.
but our focus is primarily on our own personal projects. And so the books that I choose to publish through our publishing company
Right.
are either projects like Geisha Hands that I
Right.
know a traditional publisher is not going to publish.
Okay.
And the reason for that is because, let me find a good one. Geisha Hands is fully illustrated with color illustrations.
Right. Okay.
And a traditional publisher
Don't
is
like that.
really not going to publish something with like 47 color
Okay.
illustrations. That's a
Okay.
really big investment for them to
Investment.
do,
To do.
as well as the formatting of the book, because I have a ton of footnotes and
Right.
then there is a 40-page glossary
Wow.
detailing more details and history and facts and just all of that. So,
Right.
this is a book that a traditional publisher is not going to take that kind of risk with, as well
Okay.
as, take the time to create unique formatting,
Okay.
because that's also having to invest more in their
More and more in the
formatters and
project.
all that,
Mhm.
as well as my 3 romance novels that I have.
Okay.
Because of the way the romance market is,
Uh-huh.
I found out from an in-source that it's pretty much once you have 10 romance novels published, it doesn't
Right.
matter where they're published,
Uh-huh.
that's when you start making big money.
Really?
And so, yes.
Okay, Alice, can you please give us a little bit more detail, because a lot of writers watch this show,
Yeah, absolutely.
and many of them really don't know how that works, and many of them also want to be established, at least well-known romance novelists.
Mhm.
So, Alice, could you please explain to us why you have to wait until at least you conceive 10 romance novels to start making money?
Absolutely. So basically, my goal is to hit that sweet number 10 with my romance
Sweet
novels, which is
number, I love
why which
that.
is why I currently have 3 romance novels published, currently working on the 4th,
Okay.
and why I only have 2 other types of novels currently published. I still have other novels I'm currently working on, but I am kind of trying to, churn out more of those romance novels, because most readers that read romance,
Right.
it's like candy. They want to read another one and another one and another one and another one, like my fans that read my romance novels,
Ah,
they buy all 3. They will buy all 3 at once.
wow.
And then they hound me and they're like, "When's the next one? When's the next one? When's the next one?" And I'm like, "I'm working on it."
But
And
listen
that's
now,
why
is that
10.
Terry Down the Wall? Is that one of the romance novels too?
Yes. Yes, it is.
Now, when I first saw the title, I thought it was a political novel,
Mm.
because you said Tearing Down the Wall. It's an intriguing title. But then I realized it's exactly what it was. Why did you come up with such a title?
Unfortunately, I actually came up with the title long before Trump became president and made the whole wall thing a
Okay.
thing. So that was just an unfortunate coincidence.
Right.
It's more about tearing down your emotional walls and being able to be vulnerable and letting people in
Okay.
is the idea behind that title. So yeah, if I had written that novel after Trump had gotten elected, I would have called it something else.
So let's go back again, because it's in the book industry. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Yes.
They say a big chunk of that is from romance novels.
Hmm.
So if there's a huge market out there for romance, why do you think that a lot of writers prefer to go historical or fantasy, other types of genres, instead of, is that, you think it's very difficult to write compelling romance stories?
I do. I do think that it is difficult to kind of walk that fine line with romance novels because in writing my other types of novels,
Uh,
I can be as flowery in my language as I want. I can use big vocab words.
right,
I can just completely make up stuff and readers will accept it because
right,
that's, known. Okay, I'm reading this genre. This is part of it. Whereas romance novels, people, they go through them like candy. They want something that's quick and easy to read, that's fun, that's light, that doesn't, really throw a lot in their face.
okay,
And they want to be able to read it, whether it's in one afternoon or in one week, they want to just be able to just completely plow through the book. So, you have to make sure that the style that you're using is
uh,
easy to read. You want to use smaller vocab words. Not saying they're dumb. That's a big mistake people make.
right,
Romance readers are not dumb. It's not about smart or dumb. It's about quick read. It's when you're reading smaller vocab words, you can read
right,
much faster rather than
right,
having to sit
exactly,
on a word and
right,
think about it. Because
right.
romance novels are not about thinking about it. They're about sitting with a fluffy story and having a good time. And a lot of people miss that mark. They want to put all kinds of stuff in there, and it's like, no, 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 no. This is you're having it, sitting there with your afternoon tea, eating some cookies with a fun book. This isn't I'm so smart at my book club time. No, 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 no. Like a lot of people make that mistake. This is
Okay,
a purely sugar fun time
okay.
is really what it's all about. And a lot of people, they really want to put their own agendas in there. They want to sound smart, they want to put all sorts of stuff that just does not belong in a romance novel. Yeah.
And then because there's a specific audience out there for it.
Yes,
Well,
exactly.
why do you say that you have to wait until you reach number 10 to start
Mhm.
making money? Out of one romance novel, you think a writer can, because, marketing is very difficult, in the
Mhm.
publishing world.
Yeah.
So why you have to wait until, because you can strike it big in just one book. But you say what you're saying now, 10 romance novel would probably guarantee that success. Is that what you're saying?
I feel like guarantee is just a strong word. I
Is it
don't want
strong word?
anyone coming
Okay.
after me or
Okay.
anything. It's
Okay.
just the main marker for that you're going to start seeing results is when you have at least about 10 romance novels. And the reason for that is, like I said before, people who read romance, they read a lot of them. They plow through them.
Okay.
People who read romance novels, they read like anywhere from like 15 to 30 books a month. So, they like authors that have multiple books already available for them because they like more of the same. So if there are two authors and one of them has 3 books and one of them has 20 books,
Uh-huh.
they're going to buy the one that has 20 books because then they know, okay, I'm going to get it. It's going to be in this style. It's going to be presented to me this way, no surprises, and I get to read 20 of them like that. So, that's basically their thinking. And once you hit 10, that's pretty much when you start to get more
Exactly.
of the market's attention. That's when more people are going to be like, okay, this is a writer that's going to keep writing more romance novels. I can invest in their books and I can know that they're going to keep writing more so that I can read more. So that's kind of where that comes from. It's
And,
very much not a one and done industry. You need to keep it going.
but that comes to my next question. A lot of writers are pretty good writers, but they have not been so lucky to find a reputable company who would be willing to sign it on. So, and then because of that, they go down the path of self-publishing. Is that something that you would advise young writers to do if they can't really pierce through what they call this the big glass ceiling? Is that something that you would advise them to do? Don't wait and you just publish anyway?
Yes and no. So there's the two sides of the coin with the self-publishing world. There is, the good side in that, you have full creative control over your story, which is something that you do have to sacrifice a portion of that to traditional publishers. You don't
Right,
have full creative control. They get to, make changes to stuff if they want to in order to help it sell better, within their publication
right,
stuff. But also it has created kind of this unfortunate underbelly of the self-publishing world, that there are a lot of people out there
Right.
who don't want to go through proper channels of creating their writing, and they will just literally take what's essentially a rough draft, just, putting out your first idea, and then they'll, publish it, self-publish it. And then it creates this bad name for self-published authors, that they're like,
Exactly.
oh, self-published authors aren't professional because there's spelling errors galore. They don't know how to format stuff, so it's hard to read, and just because they don't take the time to
Right.
properly research
Right.
all of that goes in. Because with a traditional publisher, you don't have to worry about all that. They worry about all that for you. You just go, here's my story.
Because
And then
it's an investment. Yeah.
yeah. But if you self-publish, you have to make sure, whether it's you edit your own stuff, you hire an editor, you get beta readers, whatever, you got to make sure that thing is polished like a diamond. You got to make sure that you don't have silly spelling errors and grammar issues and, God forbid, plot holes and stuff that just doesn't make any sense, because people will rip you apart in the reviews. People are ruthless. And then also you have to research how to do formatting. Whether you use InDesign or some other program, you have to learn, how do I actually make a book be a book? You can't just throw a Word document up there. You have to make sure, how big do I want the font to be? What font do I want to use so that it's super readable? How do I want it formatted on the page? How big of the margins do I want? Worrying about the gutter, the fold in the middle of the book, to make sure there's no words getting trapped in the gutter so people can't read it. All of that goes into, making a novel. And then on top of it, cover art is another big problem. You got to make sure your cover art is good, that it draws the reader to want to buy your book, to make sure that they can, see what your book is all about, and then back copy, writing the summary of your book on the back and all that information. There's a lot that goes into self-publishing. So, if you want to do that, if you want to, whether you're bypassing it, you want creative control, or whether it's you just don't want to go through the rigmarole of publishers, you got to make sure you dot your I's and cross your T's. You got to make sure that you are on the same professional level as them. Otherwise, you will not be successful.
And having said that, they say some of the writers, just exactly what you're just saying now, some of the writers have tried hard to look as professional as possible, but then again, they still run into a major roadblock is marketing, and also not too many literary venues who would accept someone who self-publishes work. So you have little chains getting your work accepted, even for a literary competition. So it's very hard. It's very hard, but yet thousands, if not millions of authors every year trying to do just that, because it's so difficult to find an agent or find an independent or even traditional publisher to accept your work. So what advice would you give someone who is probably about your age, who's been writing a lot of manuscripts, has been piling on top of each other, but yet still hasn't been able to find that, dream agent or publisher? Would that person still continue to search for it, to pitch for it, or simply just at some point just decide to make the strategic decision? I said, well, I write a story and I want it to be exposed to the world, so let me just take my chance.
Honestly, I gotta say, do both. Do both. I have certain projects that I'm working on that are earmarked for, I'm going to submit this to traditional publishers, and then I have certain projects that I've earmarked, I'm going to, have this through my publishing company so that I can have creative control.
Right.
And there are some, some of the projects that are over here that I'm like, if I get to, X goal of, I haven't gotten accepted and it's been rejected X amount of times, or it's been, X amount of time, whether it's months or years or whatever, then I'll just switch it over and, publish it via my publishing company. Like, I've already set up those parameters for myself. And I really think that it's, if you are really sitting on a big pile of manuscripts and, you've been trying to break into that publishing world and you just can't reach it, pick one of your novels. Like, don't pick your crown jewel. Do not pick your crown jewel. Don't do that.
Don't do that. I want you out there. All of you writers out there who's watching this video, could you say it again for them?
Don't pick your crown jewel.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just like they say, you save the best for last, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Hold on to your crown jewel. Wait for that real good moment for your crown jewel. Take your novels that are, I'm not saying, publish bad novels. That is not what I'm saying here. I'm saying the ones that are like, they're below your crown jewel, basically. Okay. They're for whatever reason.
Right.
Self-publish those so that at least you can get your name out there. You can start marketing yourself as a published author. You can start building a readership and then work your way up. Start then submitting to, your better works, not your crown jewel, save that one for last, but your better works, start submitting those to traditional publishers to get their attention, because the thing that publishers care most about is readership. They need you to guarantee them an audience because you are an investment. They're investing money in you. They're investing in the whole process of making it into a book, in printing it, in shipping it out to bookstores. All of that costs money. That's all upfront money they are spending on you as the author. So you as the author got to bring to the table, hey, I have humans who are actually going to read this book. We're actually going to buy this book. And if you can come in and be like, hey, you know what? I already published this novel, that novel, blah, blah, blah. I have, all these fans. I, go to these panels and talk on them. If you already have a readership, you're more likely to catch a publisher's attention. But that's why it's so hard for first-time authors, their first book right off the bat, to get published, because they have zero readership. They have zero audience. A big reason why I was able to get my first novel published through a professional publisher is because I have an audience already built in. Even though I hadn't been published yet, I was very much ingrained in the Chicago writing community. I was going to events, as well as, even though that was my first novel, that's not my first book that I've had published. I have several art books and poetry collections I published before my first novel, and people were buying them. So I was able to point to that to the publisher and be like, I can sell books. I can sell books all day long. And that means a lot to them.
Okay. Now, you also have your own website. And also you're very active in many and several social media platforms.
Yep.
So you're recommending an author must do so to build his own base. Fan base. Okay. And once a publisher sees that, then you begin to be perceived as someone they can work with.
Absolutely. It's audience equals dollar signs. There are even publishers out there that will require that your Twitter account has like 10,000 followers or 25,000 followers. They even have some of those social media requirements where they're like, we need you to have an actual audience. We need to know that you're going to have people who are actually going to buy your book. If you're Joe Schmo, you only have 5 followers. This is your very first book. You don't go to any events. You don't have any connection in any sort of writing community. They're kind of like, well, why should we invest in you? What do you bring to the table? And like, your story can be amazing. It can be amazing, but if you don't have that readership, you're kind of not really bringing a lot to the table for a publisher, and that's why you'll get passed over. So building up that fandom for yourself is huge. And since we have social media at our disposal, it's easier than ever to market yourself. Like, absolutely, hit that digital pavement, go out there, shout about your book in the abyss, people take notice.
Okay. Now, my question, because we've been talking for some time. This is a very interesting conversation. Yes, Alice. But now listen, you've managed to create your own publishing company. How did you come about to make this decision? Because the expenses involved in this.
Yeah.
So how did you come about, this to make this decision?
Yeah. So, I mean, again, it goes back to my days in the modeling industry. I actually met Brian. He's a photographer, and we would go to photography events together. And we formed this really close friendship. And around the time when I was preparing to retire from modeling, we started putting together this publication called Cloud Orchid Magazine.
Okay.
Because we were already getting a lot of our photography published in fashion magazines.
Right.
And we kind of looked at each other because I'm a writer and he also has a lot of experience working with technical writing, with putting together, all of that formatting.
Right.
We looked at each other and we're like, this isn't so hard. We can do this ourselves.
Okay.
And so we actually started our own fashion magazine. And there's something like, I can't remember, it's like 20 something issues of the fashion magazine, and I wrote all the editorials for it.
Okay.
He did all the photography for it. We went to tons of events. It was a super rad time.
Okay.
We did that for a few years.
Okay.
And then honestly, we got bored of doing it, and we just had all these cool projects that we wanted to see come to fruition. So we transformed it into a publishing company to create our art books together. And then it's just kind of exploded from there.
Okay. Wow. That's a lot of work too.
It is.
A lot of passion behind it too.
Yes.
Yeah. Is this something that you can advise authors to do if they have what it takes to do it? Because I know when because you have both eyes. I mean, you can look at it from both standpoints, from a publisher's standpoint.
Yeah.
And sometimes I understand why a publisher has to really be very careful in picking up, the manuscript, because it's an investment, and it's not easy to sell books unless the product itself is relevant out there. There's an audience out there for it. I can understand that. Now, for you, have you had a lot of writers submitting their work to your publication?
So we haven't really had a lot of outside submissions. We did publish one book by one of my author friends, Spirits in the Winds. It's a really good book. It's about Chicago jazz. It's a short story combined with some photography that Brian did. And the writing is by Brendan Detzner. And the majority of the outside submissions that we have published have been through our sister publication, L'Art d'Obscurité, which is an art magazine where we specialize in like poetry and like art photography and stuff like that. So we get a lot of like short stories and poetry. So we put that in the sister publication, but we haven't really gotten any like outside novel submissions. So I can't really speak on that since we haven't had experience with that yet. But from publishing my novels, I mean, it is a lot to take on. And I have Brian, we're a team. So I have him, whereas a lot of people, they have to do it all by themselves. And it's a lot of work, He basically takes my writing and my art and he magically makes it a book. He does all that. Whereas if you're doing it by yourself, you have to do all of that yourself. And that's a ton of work. Like I spent 5 years writing and illustrating this book.
5 years. Wow.
And then Brian spent 3 months alone just designing the layout with me. Not even to mention putting it together, all of the proofs that we went through. Like it was a full year between when I handed over the manuscript and the illustrations and this actually being a book.
So now, where can someone find this book? On Amazon? It's on all the retail, like Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, and and also some local bookstores too. We can find it too. But it's on all the major platforms out there.
Yes, it's on all the major platforms. It is also Geisha Hands is not. Love of the Sea and Tearing Down the Wall are actually available to check out at the South Chicago Public Library. So if you don't have the coin, you can go check it out for free on loan at the public library. And I actually was planning on inducting Geisha Hands into the public library in 2020, and of course that got canceled because
It is, of course.
2020. But yeah, it is available everywhere, and a big part of that is because Brian does the heavy lifting with getting those IBN numbers and, you know, making sure that we have all the barcodes and all that stuff. That's what enables you to get onto the big retailers, and what enables you to be able to be inducted into public libraries is that IBN number. And not only is that a lot of technical work, it's also an investment. You have to pay for it.
Really?
Yes. That costs money.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I know you have a series called Freyas Baby, and you want to show it to the audience?
Yeah.
It looks like.
Where is the other one? Okay, so I have Freyas Baby.
Okay.
And Freyas Baby Shattered.
Okay. Is that a sequel?
No. So this one is actually an alternative timeline. In Freyas Baby, she is a high school student who becomes pregnant and has to go through those struggles. Whereas in Freyas Baby Shattered, it's the same thing. High school girl who gets pregnant, but she loses the baby. And so going through that grief and going through that loss. So yeah, drastically different storylines, you know, from the same sort of idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And we can find out anywhere too. All the platforms we can find it.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. I did put up my website catalog just because that's like the easiest place to start, because I have literally everything there, and it has all the links so that you can, you know, buy it on Amazon and, you know, all that. But it's, you know, it's just easier because it's all right there. You don't have to go searching, you know, for this book and that book. It's
all in the same category.
Yeah.
Now let me ask you a question. We've been talking about literature for some time now. Because I know besides writing books, you're also a performance artist. So how do you do all this, Alice? How?
So before COVID, my schedule basically looked like that. Friday through Sundays, I either was at a convention selling my books and my artwork, or I was at the local nightclub performing as a drag artist. And so it just all depended on when, you know, what gigs I secured at the nightclub versus what conventions I signed up for, and just, you know, juggling all that scheduling. So basically every day for me before COVID was a different day. Every day there was something different going on. And, you know, between the different things that I had scheduled, so like, you know, drag shows, photo shoots, conventions, art galleries, you know, between those scheduled days, I had what I called my free days. And those were the days where I would literally sit down and all day, just like, you know, for like 12 hours, I would just sit down and I would either work on my writing or I would work on my artwork. And that was literally like all I did.
But how much time you left for sleep? Because you're saying all these things you have yet to say, to mention the sleep hours.
That's the problem, is I was really not sleeping. There were some times where I would literally have a drag show Friday night. Like I would go to the convention, the dealer hall would close at 6. I would rush home, get in face, go to the club, be at the club until 3 a.m., magically sober up, and then go to the convention the next morning at 8 a.m. and not sleep. Like I would do stuff like that. I don't recommend this. This is not recommended. It is very bad. Please don't do that. Because my therapist and my doctor actually gave me a really hard reality check that they're like, sweetie, you can either live your life at 90 miles an hour and live to be 40, or you can live your life at 40 miles an hour and live to be 90.
Exactly.
Because I actually have a heart condition, which I've unfortunately made worse by my completely psychotic lifestyle of not sleeping and going 90 miles an hour. So I have been learning how to slow down and learning how to reprioritize my time so that I can be a healthier person. I'm still doing all the things with the stuff, but I'm, making sure like I actually sleep for 8 hours at night. I'm making sure that I actually make time to sit down and eat a real meal of food. That standing up eating a granola bar at a convention is not having a real food.
Exactly.
Stuff like that. So just making myself more of a priority is the thing that I've been learning to do.
Yeah.
And because COVID has forced me to not go anywhere or do anything, I'm home all day working on my writing and my art. So, I've kind of been learning
And that's
how to do
COVID,
that.
COVID has helped in that sense,
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. So just we're getting to the end of our such interesting conversation. Let's say now, is there anything, any lesson you want to give a young writer who would want to embark upon the journey to be so prolific as you are? So what lesson would you give?
So first and foremost, the thing that I have to give as a disclaimer to people is, and I know this is about to sound super narcissistic and ridiculous, but it's mainly because I don't want people to compare themselves to me and feel bad, because I've met a lot of people that will do that, and please don't do that. I operate at a completely different level than other people. Please do not compare yourself to me. I am not normal in any sense of that word. I'm not. I'm operating on that. I started writing at age 3, and I am a legacy writer. My mother is a writer. I have other women in my family that are writers. I was raised from day one to be a writer. I was groomed for this job. My parents supported me 100% every step of the way. I went to school for writing. I started writing full novels at age 12. Yeah. And by the time that I got to college, I had a full database of writing that I had already completed. And in college, I was writing 600 pages a semester.
Wow.
Yeah. And so now at age 32, I have a database of about 60 novels that I'm sitting on that are in different levels of completion.
All this was going to be my first question. I didn't want to answer that question because when you say that, yeah, you went to college and you majored in fiction writing. A lot of parents, I'm a parent myself, they tend to have their children to go traditional. You go become a doctor or maybe an engineer, so you can excel in the corporate world. So yeah. I was going to answer that question, but with the passion, I refrain myself from asking the question. Now I understand, since the get-go, so you were born in the family of writers. So yes. So it wasn't a problem for your parents to understand that's what you wanted to do.
No, honestly, I'll be real. I get texts from my parents being like, why aren't you working on this project? When was the last time you worked on this project? They're all on my case. They're like, you haven't worked on this project. You need to do that. That they are 100% I am a writer. That's who I am. That's who I need to be. It is my raison d'être, all of the above. So that's why I tell people, please don't compare yourself to me, because I know that I live a very unusual life in that I started from day one, with pencil and paper in my hands. My destiny was already written. I knew who I wanted to be, not just my parents, being supportive and all that, but me, people would ask me, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a writer. Okay. I always knew that, and I was always pursuing that. My parents, how they would punish me growing up was they would ground me from my laptop so I couldn't work on my writing. That's how they punished me.
There's one question I always ask writers who come to the conversation. I know every writer has his favorite writer too. So which one which one is your favorite, your best writer? It doesn't have to be an American. It could be any writer.
So my all-time favorite writer is actually Juliette Martellier, the author of the Seven Waters series. So Daughter of the Forest, Son of Shadows, all that. I love her writing. I love it so much. It really influenced how I write fantasy. She just is such an eloquent writer. Her scenes are just so beautiful and vivid. I just fell in love with her books. I really did.
Okay. That's All right, so it's been such a pleasure to have you, Alice, in the conversation. And I'm pretty sure once that historical novel is published, we're going to have to sit down and have just.
Oh, I would love that.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Would you please show the audience the many of books that you've already published? It's a collection of. Can you tell them? Can you tell the audience?
Yeah. So these are my art books. They are
Okay.
a combination of my short stories and poetry and artwork and Brian's photography.
Okay.
There are more. Oh my god.
Wow.
Yeah, there are 17 art books. And
Wow.
then here's the largest one.
Wow.
And then oh my god, I have so many books in my lap right now. I have 6 out of the 7 poetry collections that I've published with my artwork and poetry and Brian's photography. And I have a database of about 300 and... Oh wait, no, I recently hit 400 poems. Yeah, I recently wrote my 400th poem. So I have a database that I draw on for these. And I'm always adding to it. Same with the short stories. So yeah, that's why when I tell people, please don't compare yourself to me. I live on planet crazy person. This is the proof right here. All of the
Yeah. Wow. You guys, just like you just heard it from Alice herself. Don't feel intimidated. Don't feel like you are in such an underachiever, because she's been achieved so much. She has achieved so much. But try to do the best you can. You don't have to be as prolific as Alice, but as a writer, you need to be consistent.
Exactly.
That's all.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So that's great.